Sarah Chun adjusted her rearview mirror and watched her 8-year-old daughter Emma climb the school bus steps, backpack bouncing with each movement. The morning routine felt as familiar as breathing now. Coffee at 6, breakfast prep, homework check, and the careful orchestration of getting Emma ready for another day at Riverside Elementary. Sarah waved goodbye through the windshield, her smile genuine but practiced. As the yellow bus disappeared around the corner, Sarah's shoulders relaxed slightly. She pulled her Honda Pilot into the empty spot outside Starbucks, the same spot she claimed every Tuesday and Thursday after drop-off. The barista, a college student named Marcus, already had her order ready. Medium Pike Place, 1 sugar, no cream. She'd been coming here for 3 years, and the consistency helped maintain the image she'd carefully constructed. Sarah Beth Chun, divorced mother of 1, freelance graphic designer, volunteer coordinator for the school fundraiser. That was the story everyone knew. That was the story that kept them all safe. The truth was buried so deep that sometimes Sarah almost believed the lie herself. Almost. She settled into her usual corner table with her laptop, opening what appeared to be design files for a local restaurant's new menu. In reality, she was monitoring news feeds from 7 different countries, checking encrypted message boards that most people didn't know existed, and maintaining the digital footprint that convinced everyone she was exactly who she appeared to be. Her phone buzzed. Text from her neighbor Linda Henderson. School fundraiser meeting at 2. Can you still make it? Sarah typed back quickly. Wouldn't miss it. Bringing the poster mock-ups. She smiled as she hit send. Linda had become a genuine friend over the past 2 years, despite Sarah's careful emotional distance. Linda's husband worked in insurance. Her biggest worry was whether their son Jake would make varsity soccer, and she organized neighborhood block parties with the enthusiasm of a military campaign. Sarah envied that simplicity more than Linda would ever know. The laptop screen refreshed automatically, and Sarah's trained eye caught movement in the peripheral feeds. A small item buried in the international news section of a military blog. Naval Special Operations veteran honored posthumously for classified Middle East operation 2008 to 2011. Sarah's coffee cup paused halfway to her lips. The dates were right. The location was right, but the name listed wasn't anyone she'd served with. Either the Navy was still protecting identities, or someone was fishing for information about operations that officially never happened. She closed the laptop with deliberate calm and gathered her things. The paranoia never fully left, even after 15 years of civilian life. It couldn't. The people she'd fought against had long memories and patient planning strategies. Some of them were still out there, still building networks, still settling scores. The drive home took her through the heart of suburban Clearwater, Florida. Neat houses with manicured lawns, soccer fields where weekend warriors coached their kids, shopping centers anchored by Target and Home Depot. It was about as far from the mountains of Afghanistan as geography and lifestyle could manage. That was intentional. Sarah had chosen this life carefully. After her discharge in 2009, she'd spent 2 years in therapy, 2 years learning how to exist without mission parameters and constant threat assessment. The Navy had offered her positions in training and strategic planning, roles that would have kept her in the military community. She'd turned them all down. Her daughter needed a mother, not a warrior. Emma had been 2 when Sarah left active duty. Old enough to remember the extended absences, the late-night phone calls that sent Sarah rushing out the door, the apartments that never quite felt like home because they weren't meant to be permanent. Young enough to adapt to their new reality in Florida, where mommy worked from home and was always there for bedtime stories. Sarah pulled into her driveway and sat for a moment, studying the house that had become their sanctuary. 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a small office where she conducted her legitimate graphic design business. The backyard had a playset and a garden where she grew vegetables with the same precision she'd once used to plan extraction routes. The mailman, Jerry, was making his rounds. He waved from the sidewalk, and Sarah waved back. Jerry knew she worked from home, that she'd moved here from California after her divorce, that she made excellent chocolate chip cookies for the annual Mail Carrier Appreciation Day. These were the details that mattered in suburban life. These were the details that created the perfect cover. Inside, Sarah's home office looked like any other freelancer's workspace. Mac computer, design software, client files, inspirational quotes on sticky notes. But built into the desk's seemingly decorative base was a biometric safe containing documents that could get her killed if the wrong people found them. Emergency cash in 3 different currencies, 2 passports, a secure satellite phone, and a Glock 19 that she cleaned and maintained every Sunday while Emma was at her father's apartment. Mark Chun had been a good husband and was a devoted father, but their marriage couldn't survive what Sarah couldn't tell him about herself. He thought she'd worked military intelligence, behind a desk, pushing papers, and analyzing data. The truth would have destroyed him. It was better to let him believe she'd left the Navy because she wanted to focus on family. It was better to let him think their divorce was about growing apart, not about the nightmares she couldn't explain. Sarah changed into workout clothes and headed for the home gym she'd built in the garage. 30 minutes of cardio, 45 minutes of strength training, 15 minutes of what she told herself was yoga but was actually combat conditioning disguised as flexibility work. The routine kept her mission ready while appearing to be nothing more than a dedicated fitness enthusiast. As she ran on the treadmill, Sarah's mind worked through contingency plans the way other soccer moms planned dinner menus. If the international situation deteriorated in certain regions, would her old contacts try to pull her back in? If someone identified her real background, how quickly could she relocate Emma? If Mark pushed harder for more custody time, would the background checks reveal inconsistencies in her cover story? The questions never stopped. They'd become background noise to her daily life, like Emma's music practice or the neighbor's lawnmower. Constant vigilance wrapped in suburban normalcy. Her secure phone chirped once, a sound different from her regular iPhone. Sarah's pace on the treadmill never changed, but her pulse spiked. The secure phone hadn't activated in 4 years. The last time was a routine check to confirm she was maintaining operational security protocols. She finished her workout with deliberate normalcy, showered, and dressed in the mom uniform of yoga pants and a university sweatshirt. Only then did she check the message. Invitation extended for November 15th demonstration flight in AS Pensacola. Family Day event, civilian participants welcome. Educational opportunity regarding naval aviation. Please confirm attendance. The message appeared to be from a Navy Public Relations office, the kind of invitation that went to military families and community leaders. But Sarah recognized the subtle markers that indicated this wasn't a routine PR event. Someone wanted her at that base. Someone knew exactly who she was. She deleted the message and ran 3 different security scans on the phone. No tracking, no malware, no signs of compromise. But someone with serious resources and detailed knowledge had found her. After 15 years of perfect invisibility, someone had reached out. The question was whether they were friend or enemy. Sarah made herself a sandwich and reviewed her options. Ignore the invitation and assume it was a fishing expedition. Accept it and potentially walk into a trap. Disappear immediately with Emma and start over in another state with another identity. None of the options felt right. Each carried risks that could destroy the life she'd built for her daughter. Her regular phone buzzed with a text from Emma's school. Early dismissal today due to teacher planning. Pick up at 1:15 p.m. Sarah smiled despite the tension. Emma's early dismissal gave her more time to research the November 15th event and figure out who was really behind the invitation. More importantly, it gave her an excuse to focus on being Emma's mom for the afternoon instead of obsessing over threats that might be imaginary. She locked the secure phone in the biometric safe and headed for the school pickup line, sliding back into the role that had become more real than her military identity. Other parents would wave, ask about the fundraiser, discuss weekend plans. Sarah would smile and chat and maintain the perfect cover story that protected everyone she cared about. But underneath the suburban mom exterior, Navy SEAL Sarah Chun was already planning for the possibility that her past was about to catch up with her present. Some skills never got rusty, no matter how long they stayed hidden. As she drove toward Riverside Elementary, Sarah caught herself checking the rearview mirror more carefully than usual, noting which cars had been behind her since leaving the house, mentally cataloging exit routes and safe locations. The paranoia was back in full force, sharp and familiar as an old scar. 15 years of peace might be coming to an end. The only question was whether she'd be ready when it did. Emma would be waiting by the flagpole, probably chatting with her best friend Katie about the science project they were working on together. Normal 8-year-old concerns in a normal 8-year-old world. Sarah was determined to keep it that way, no matter what shadows from her past were trying to surface. The November 15th invitation could wait until tonight, when Emma was asleep, and Sarah could dive deep into intelligence gathering without worrying about curious young eyes. For now, she had a daughter to pick up, homework to supervise, and dinner to plan. The perfect suburban mom routine that had become her most important mission of all. Sarah waited until 11:47 p.m. to begin her investigation. Emma had been asleep for over 2 hours, her breathing steady and peaceful in the room next door. The house had settled into the quiet rhythms of suburban midnight, with only the soft hum of the refrigerator and distant highway traffic creating background noise. Sarah's home office transformed after hours. What appeared to be a simple graphic design workspace during the day became something entirely different when she activated the secure systems built into seemingly innocent furniture. The desk drawer that neighbors thought held art supplies actually contained military-grade communication equipment. The decorative lamp base housed a signal amplifier that could reach encrypted networks most people didn't know existed. She pulled up everything she could find about the November 15th Naval Aviation Demonstration at NAS Pensacola. Official Navy websites showed a standard community outreach event. Local news previews mentioned educational presentations about modern naval aircraft, static displays, and limited flight demonstrations for invited guests. Nothing appeared unusual or threatening. But Sarah's instincts, honed by years of intelligence work, told her this was anything but routine. She dug deeper, using access credentials that technically no longer existed, but still worked if you knew the right backdoors. The guest list for November 15th included local politicians, business leaders, military families, and educational groups. Standard community relations attendees. But, buried in the administrative files, she found something interesting. 3 of the invited guests had backgrounds in special operations. All 3 were officially retired. All 3 had served in classified positions between 2008 and 2012. All 3 were now living civilian lives under carefully constructed identities. Sarah felt her pulse quicken. This wasn't a coincidence. Someone was gathering former operators who'd worked in the same theater during the same time frame. Someone with enough access to identify people who were supposed to be invisible. She cross-referenced the names with her own memories of operations during that period. Lieutenant Commander Mike Rodriguez had worked intelligence coordination for SEAL Team 6. She'd briefed him twice on target packages in Afghanistan. Staff Sergeant Jennifer Walsh had been Air Force Special Operations, running logistics for deep insertion missions. Sarah had shared a transport helicopter with her during a particularly hairy extraction in 2010. The third name made her blood run cold. Chief Petty Officer David Park. Sarah remembered him very clearly because she'd been forced to leave him behind on her last official mission. Park had been captured during what was supposed to be a routine intelligence gathering operation that turned into a firefight. Sarah's team had been ordered to extract immediately, leaving Park in enemy hands. He'd been listed as killed in action 6 months later. If David Park was still alive, if he'd been on that November 15th guest list, then someone knew things about Sarah's service record that should have been buried in classified files forever. More importantly, someone might know about the mission that ended her military career and nearly ended her life. Sarah's hands moved automatically through the familiar process of secure communication setup. She activated encryption protocols that would bounce her signal through 7 different countries before reaching its destination. The contact she was reaching out to hadn't heard from her in 8 years. She hoped he'd still be monitoring the old channels. The response came back in 90 seconds. Text only, maximum security. Songbird. Thought you were fishing in Florida permanently. What's the water temperature? Michael Santos, her former handler, and the only person in the Navy who knew the complete truth about her last mission. His message used their old code system. He was asking if her situation had turned dangerous. Sarah typed carefully. Water's been perfect for 15 years. Recent weather changes suggest storm approaching. 3 mutual acquaintances receiving same invitation to November boat show. One was supposed to be permanently offshore. Translation. Her cover had been safe for 15 years, but something was happening. 3 former operators were being gathered, including one who was officially dead. Santos' response took longer this time. Storm system tracked from original fishing grounds. Suggest avoiding boat show unless you're prepared for rough weather. Alternative marinas available if relocation necessary. Sarah understood. The threat was connected to their old operational area in Afghanistan. Santos was recommending she skip the November 15th event unless she was ready to go operational again. He could provide new identities and relocation assistance if needed. But running meant leaving Emma's life in Clearwater, abandoning the stability her daughter had known for 8 years. It meant Mark would never see his daughter again, that Emma would lose her friends, her school, her sense of home. Sarah had sacrificed everything to give Emma a normal childhood. She wasn't ready to destroy that unless she had no choice. She typed back, checking weather patterns before making sailing decisions. Will advise if marina change necessary. Santos acknowledged with a simple Roger. Channel remains open. Sarah closed the secure connection and leaned back in her chair. The smart play was probably to disappear immediately. Pack up Emma, liquidate their lives in Clearwater, and vanish into whatever identity Santos could provide. But something about this felt different from routine operational security. Someone had gone to extraordinary effort to identify and locate 3 former operators who'd served in highly classified roles. Someone had managed to find David Park, who was supposed to be dead. Someone with that level of access and determination wasn't likely to give up just because their targets disappeared. Running might only delay the inevitable. Sarah spent the next 4 hours conducting the most thorough background investigation of her civilian life that she'd ever attempted. She examined every interaction, every friendship, every casual conversation from the past 15 years, looking for signs that someone had been watching, gathering information, building a profile. Linda Henderson, her neighbor and closest friend in Clearwater, had moved to the neighborhood 6 months after Sarah and Emma. Linda had been the one to invite Sarah to join the school volunteer committee. She'd been the one to suggest Emma try out for the youth soccer team where Linda's son played. Casual interactions that had seemed like normal neighborly friendness. But when Sarah looked at the pattern objectively, Linda had been remarkably effective at drawing Sarah into the community, at creating social connections that made Sarah more visible and more traceable. Sarah pulled up everything she could find about Linda's background. The public records looked perfect. Born in Ohio, graduated from Ohio State with a degree in marketing, married to Robert Henderson, who worked for a regional insurance company. 2 children, a mortgage, a credit history going back 15 years. Too perfect. Sarah ran deeper searches, using techniques that pushed legal boundaries, but provided more comprehensive information. Linda's college records were authentic, but sparse. Her employment history before moving to Florida had gaps that were explained by freelance consulting, a conveniently vague profession that was difficult to verify. Most tellingly, Linda's digital footprint before 2016 was almost non-existent. No social media posts, no online shopping history, no digital traces of the kind that accumulated naturally around people's lives in the internet age. Linda Henderson might be the most thorough surveillance operative Sarah had ever encountered. The realization hit Sarah like a physical blow. For 2 years, she'd trusted Linda with details about Emma's schedule, about their family routines, about Sarah's work and travel patterns. She'd let Emma have sleepovers at Linda's house. She'd shared wine and conversation and what felt like genuine friendship. If Linda was an operator, she'd had access to everything she needed to build a complete picture of Sarah's civilian life. She'd know about Emma's school, about Mark's custody schedule, about every routine and vulnerability in their carefully constructed suburban existence. Sarah checked the time. 4:23 a.m. Emma would be awake in 2 hours, expecting breakfast and help with her book report about dolphins. The normal morning routine that had become the foundation of their lives together. But everything had changed in the past 6 hours. The safe suburban world Sarah had built for her daughter was apparently an illusion. Someone had been watching them for years, and that surveillance was now transitioning into something more active. Sarah made coffee and sat in the kitchen, looking out at the backyard where Emma played every afternoon. The swing set Mark had installed last Christmas. The garden where they'd planted tomatoes and herbs together. The life that had felt real and secure and permanent. She had less than 72 hours to decide whether to run or fight. Running meant Emma would lose everything she'd ever known. Fighting meant putting Emma in potential danger if Sarah's assessment was wrong, and this was all innocent coincidence. But deep in her gut, Sarah knew this wasn't coincidence. 15 years after leaving the Navy, someone had found her. Someone wanted the 3 survivors of a classified operation that had officially never happened. Someone who had the resources to place a surveillance operative in her neighborhood for 2 years without detection. The November 15th invitation wasn't a trap. It was an ultimatum. Sarah finished her coffee and started the familiar morning routine. Shower, breakfast prep, reviewing Emma's homework assignment. The rhythms that had defined their life together for 8 years. But underneath the suburban mom exterior, Navy SEAL Sarah Chun was already running tactical scenarios and planning for the possibility that their quiet life in Clearwater was about to end forever. The hardest part wouldn't be the operation itself, whatever it turned out to be. The hardest part would be protecting Emma's innocence about who her mother really was and what she'd done in the years before Emma was born. Some secrets were too dangerous to share, even with the people you loved most. Especially with them. The morning of November 15th dawned clear and unseasonably warm for late fall in Florida. Sarah had been awake since 4 a.m., running through equipment checks and mental preparation that felt like muscle memory despite 15 years of civilian life. Emma was spending the weekend with Mark, a custody arrangement that Sarah had encouraged without explaining her real reasons. Naval Air Station Pensacola looked exactly as Sarah remembered from her brief visits during active duty. White buildings with red-tiled roofs arranged in neat geometric patterns, aircraft hangars stretching toward the Gulf of Mexico, and the constant background noise of training flights and maintenance operations. The November 15th community event was being held near the Naval Aviation Museum, with static aircraft displays set up on the tarmac and educational presentations scheduled throughout the day. Sarah arrived at the designated meeting point wearing civilian clothes that could pass for soccer mom casual, but allowed unrestricted movement. Khaki pants, navy polo shirt, comfortable shoes that could handle extended standing or rapid movement if necessary. Her purse contained items that appeared innocent, but served specific tactical purposes. Pepper spray disguised as lip balm, a tactical pen that could function as a weapon, and a GPS tracker that would allow extraction teams to locate her anywhere on the base. Commander Linda Walsh met her at the visitor parking area, also dressed in civilian clothes, but carrying herself with the bearing of someone accustomed to military environments. She handed Sarah a visitor badge and a program for the day's events. Rodriguez arrived 30 minutes ago, Linda said quietly. He's been making conversation with base personnel and asking questions about flight schedules. Professional curiosity or intelligence gathering, hard to tell which. And Park. No sign yet. But we've confirmed he's alive and in the country. Immigration records show him entering through Miami 6 weeks ago under a passport that shouldn't exist. Sarah clipped the visitor badge to her shirt and surveyed the base layout through the chain-link fence. Multiple aircraft were visible on the tarmac, including several F/A-18 Super Hornets that were part of the planned demonstration. Military personnel and civilian visitors moved between static displays and information booths with the relaxed atmosphere of a community education event. Extraction protocols? Sarah asked. Linda touched her ear briefly, activating a communication system that was invisible to casual observation. Overwatch teams are positioned on the control tower and hangar rooftops. Emergency response teams are staged in unmarked vehicles at 3 points around the perimeter. If you activate your panic button, we can have you out of here in under 90 seconds. Sarah nodded and checked her own communication earpiece, a device that looked like a standard hearing aid but provided secure channel access to the support teams. The familiar weight of surveillance and backup felt both reassuring and ominous. It meant she was protected, but it also meant the threat was serious enough to require extensive resources. They walked through the main gate after security screening that was more thorough than typical civilian events, but not unusual for military installations. Sarah's cover identity as a freelance graphic designer held up to casual scrutiny, and her visitor badge granted access to the demonstration areas without special restrictions. The Aviation Museum was hosting families with children, retired military personnel sharing stories with younger generations, and local business leaders who supported naval operations through community partnerships. Sarah and Linda blended into the crowd easily, moving from display to display while maintaining awareness of everyone around them. Mike Rodriguez was easy to spot near the F/A-18 static display. He'd aged 15 years since Sarah last saw him, but he carried himself with the same confident bearing that had made him effective in intelligence coordination roles. He was engaged in conversation with a Navy pilot who was explaining the aircraft's capabilities to a group of interested visitors. Sarah approached the group and listened to the technical discussion while studying Rodriguez for signs of hostile intent or unusual behavior. He asked informed questions about avionics upgrades and mission capabilities, the kind of professional curiosity that any former naval officer might display. But his positioning allowed him to monitor foot traffic patterns and security personnel movements with peripheral vision. When the pilot finished his presentation and the crowd dispersed, Sarah made casual contact. Mike Rodriguez? I think we served in overlapping time frames. Sarah Chun. Rodriguez's recognition was immediate and carefully controlled. Sarah, I wasn't expecting to see familiar faces today. Small world. Are you enjoying retirement? Mostly. Some days I miss the work, but civilian life has its advantages. He paused and studied her face. You look good. Settled. Thank you. Motherhood agrees with me. They maintained the casual conversation while conducting the kind of subtle assessment that former operators never completely stopped doing. Rodriguez appeared to be genuinely surprised to see her, which suggested he hadn't been briefed on her attendance. His body language indicated alertness, but not aggression. "Have you seen David Park around?" Sarah asked, testing his reaction. Rodriguez's expression shifted slightly. "David's been dead for 15 years. Why would you ask about him?" "Just wondering if you'd heard any rumors. You know how military gossip works." "I know David died in Afghanistan because I helped write the casualty notification," Rodriguez said firmly. "Whatever rumors you've heard are probably conspiracy theory nonsense." Sarah filed away his response for later analysis. Either Rodriguez genuinely believed Park was dead, or he was an exceptional liar. Both possibilities were concerning for different reasons. The conversation was interrupted by an announcement over the base public address system. "Ladies and gentlemen, please gather near Hangar 7 for the beginning of our flight demonstration. Today's presentation will feature current naval aviation capabilities and pilot training procedures." Sarah and Rodriguez joined the flow of visitors moving toward the designated area. Linda Walsh had positioned herself about 30 feet away, maintaining visual contact while appearing to be independently touring the displays. Hangar 7 was a massive structure that housed several aircraft in various stages of maintenance. For the demonstration, two F/A-18 Super Hornets had been moved to the tarmac in front of the hangar, their sleek profiles gleaming in the afternoon sunlight. A temporary speaker platform had been set up for Navy personnel to address the crowd of approximately 200 visitors. Captain Jennifer Morrison took the microphone and began the formal presentation. She outlined the history of naval aviation, the capabilities of modern carrier-based aircraft, and the training requirements for naval aviators. The crowd listened with polite attention while photographers and videographers documented the event. Sarah's attention was focused on scanning the crowd for any sign of David Park. She studied faces, postures, and behavioral patterns while appearing to listen to the presentation. Her communication earpiece crackled quietly with status updates from the Overwatch teams, confirming that no threats had been identified in the immediate area. 20 minutes into the presentation, Captain Morrison announced that selected guests would have the opportunity to experience a brief flight in one of the F/A-18 aircraft. "We're looking for volunteers who meet basic physical requirements and are interested in seeing naval aviation from a pilot's perspective." Sarah felt her pulse quicken. This wasn't part of the published program for the day's events. The flight component had been added recently, possibly for this specific gathering. "Due to safety requirements, we can only accommodate 3 passengers for today's demonstration flights," Captain Morrison continued. "Selection will be based on physical fitness, prior military experience, and availability." Linda's voice came through Sarah's earpiece. "This wasn't in the original event planning. Something's changed." Sarah raised her hand to volunteer, as did Rodriguez and several other visitors. The selection process appeared to be legitimate, with Navy medical personnel conducting basic health screenings and reviewing volunteer applications. But Sarah noticed that the 3 people ultimately chosen all had backgrounds that suggested military experience. She was selected as the second passenger. Rodriguez was chosen as the third. As they were escorted toward the aircraft for pre-flight briefing, Sarah's earpiece crackled with an urgent transmission. "Contact identified. David Park confirmed on base. He's wearing Navy maintenance coveralls and has access to aircraft preparation areas." Sarah maintained her external composure while processing this information. Park was alive, on base, and in a position to interfere with aircraft operations. The flight demonstration was either a trap designed to gather targets in a vulnerable location or an opportunity for Park to make contact under controlled circumstances. The pre-flight briefing was conducted by Lieutenant Sarah Kim, a naval aviator with over 2,000 flight hours in Super Hornets. She explained safety procedures, communication protocols, and what the civilian passengers could expect during the 30-minute demonstration flight. "Each aircraft will carry 1 passenger in addition to the pilot," Lieutenant Kim explained. "You'll be fitted with flight suits, helmets, and communication equipment. The flight profile will include basic maneuvers at moderate G-forces and an opportunity to see naval aviation training areas from altitude." Sarah was assigned to the second aircraft, piloted by Lieutenant Commander Jackson Torres. Rodriguez would fly in the first aircraft with Lieutenant Kim. The separation meant they couldn't directly communicate during the flight, but it also meant that if one aircraft encountered problems, the other could potentially provide assistance. As they suited up in the flight equipment room, Sarah noticed unusual activity around the aircraft preparation area. more maintenance personnel than seemed necessary for a routine demonstration flight, more security personnel than typical for civilian events. And, according to her earpiece updates, at least one of those maintenance workers was David Park. All passengers and aircrew, please report to the flight line for final preparations, came the announcement. Sarah walked toward the aircraft while maintaining communication with her support teams. The F/A-18 Super Hornet was an impressive machine, even when stationary. Twin engines, swept-back wings, and a cockpit that represented decades of aviation technology advancement. Under normal circumstances, Sarah would have been excited about the opportunity to fly in such an aircraft. But nothing about this situation was normal. As she approached her assigned aircraft, Sarah caught sight of a maintenance worker who turned away too quickly when their eyes met. Even after 15 years and significant physical changes, she recognized David Park immediately. He was alive, he was on this base, and he was in a position to interfere with aircraft that were about to carry her and Rodriguez away from all ground-based support. The question was whether he was trying to protect them or eliminate them. Sarah climbed the ladder to the cockpit while her earpiece transmitted final position updates from the Overwatch teams. In less than 5 minutes, she would be airborne and beyond immediate extraction assistance. Whatever was going to happen, it was about to begin. Hashtag 30,000 feet resolution. The F/A-18 Super Hornet accelerated down the runway with tremendous force, pressing Sarah back into the ejection seat as Lieutenant Commander Torres executed a textbook takeoff. Within seconds, they were climbing steeply over the Gulf of Mexico, with Pensacola shrinking beneath them into a collection of geometric patterns and silver ribbons of water. First time in a Super Hornet? Torres asked through the intercom system. First time in anything this sophisticated, Sarah replied, maintaining her cover story while monitoring radio chatter between the two aircraft. Rodriguez's voice came through clearly from the lead aircraft, asking technical questions about flight systems with the same professional curiosity he'd displayed at the static display. At 10,000 feet, Torres leveled off and began a series of gentle maneuvers designed to demonstrate the aircraft's capabilities without exceeding civilian passenger comfort limits. Sarah found herself genuinely impressed by the smoothness and power of the machine, despite the tactical concerns that dominated her attention. Her earpiece crackled with updates from the ground support teams. Both aircraft performing normally. Flight plan approved for 30 minutes over restricted airspace. No deviation from published route. But Sarah's instincts told her that something was still developing. David Park's presence at the base couldn't be coincidental, and his access to aircraft maintenance areas suggested capabilities that went beyond simple surveillance or intelligence gathering. 20 minutes into the flight, Torres announced a change in plans. We're going to extend the demonstration slightly to show you some advanced maneuvering capabilities. Hold on. The aircraft banked sharply to the left and began climbing rapidly toward 30,000 feet. Sarah's G-suit activated automatically, maintaining blood flow as the aircraft pulled forces that would have been uncomfortable without proper equipment. That wasn't in the briefing, Sarah said. Special demonstration for passengers with military backgrounds, Torres replied. We cleared it with base operations before takeoff. Sarah's earpiece erupted with urgent transmissions. Aircraft deviation from approved flight plan. Attempting radio contact with aircrew. Recommend immediate return to base. But Torres wasn't responding to ground control frequencies. The aircraft continued climbing and accelerating, now well outside the published demonstration area and approaching speeds that civilian passengers shouldn't experience. Lieutenant Commander Torres, Sarah said formally. I'm requesting return to base immediately. I'm afraid that's not possible, Torres replied, and his voice carried a tone that Sarah recognized from her years in special operations. The tone of someone executing a mission that didn't match the official briefing. Sarah tried her communication earpiece, but the signal was blocked. Either they were too far from base stations, or electronic countermeasures were being employed. She was effectively cut off from ground support and trapped in an aircraft being flown by someone whose intentions were unclear. Through the cockpit canopy, she could see the second Super Hornet maintaining formation about 200 feet to their right. Rodriguez would be experiencing the same situation, possibly with the same realization that their demonstration flight had become something entirely different. At 35,000 feet, Torres leveled off and reduced power to cruising speed. They were now flying over open ocean, approximately 40 miles south of the Florida coast. Far from any immediate assistance, in airspace where an aircraft could disappear without immediate detection. I need to tell you about David Park, Torres said. Sarah felt her blood pressure spike. What about him? He's not dead. He's been working deep cover for the past 15 years, tracking the organization that captured him in Afghanistan. They've been systematically targeting former special operations personnel who participated in specific missions during that time period. And you know this how? Because I'm David Park. The statement hit Sarah like physical impact. The pilot she'd known as Lieutenant Commander Torres was actually Chief Petty Officer David Park, age 15 years, and operating under a completely different identity. That's impossible, Sarah said, though her tactical assessment was already shifting to accommodate this new information. Facial reconstruction surgery, voice modification, 15 years of living as someone else, Park explained. The Navy declared me dead to protect the investigation. I've been tracking the people who captured me, learning about their network, identifying targets. Sarah processed this revelation while maintaining awareness of their tactical situation. If Park was telling the truth, then her intelligence assessments had been completely wrong. If he was lying, then she was trapped at 35,000 feet with someone who had elaborate reasons for eliminating her. The November 15th gathering, she said. You arranged it. I arranged it to protect you. The organization I've been tracking had identified you, Rodriguez, and one other operator as high-value targets. They were planning to eliminate all of you within the next 2 weeks. So you brought us together in a controlled environment where they could take us all at once. I brought you together where I could protect you and where we could finally take down the network that's been hunting former operators for 15 years. Sarah's earpiece crackled back to life as they apparently moved back into communication range. Aircraft 27, respond immediately. You are outside approved airspace and not responding to base control. Park activated his radio transmitter. Pensacola Base, this is Aircraft 27. Experiencing communication equipment malfunction. Returning to base immediately. But instead of turning toward shore, he continued south over the Gulf of Mexico. Sarah realized they were heading toward coordinates that had probably been pre-planned for this specific purpose. Where are we going? To meet the people who've been hunting you. They're waiting on a boat approximately 60 miles south of here. They think they're about to receive 3 captured former operators. Instead, they're about to be surrounded by federal agents who've been tracking their movements for 6 months. Sarah looked out at the ocean below them, trying to spot any sign of maritime activity. The Gulf of Mexico stretched endlessly in all directions, blue-green water under partly cloudy skies. And if you're lying to me, then I've gone to extraordinary effort to get you alone in an aircraft where I could have eliminated you much more easily at any point during the past 30 minutes, Park pointed out. The logic was sound, but Sarah's tactical training demanded contingency planning even in the face of apparently reasonable explanations. Rodriguez's aircraft, also being flown by someone who's been part of this operation. Lieutenant Kim is actually Agent Jennifer Walsh, FBI. She's been tracking the same network from the domestic law enforcement angle. Sarah absorbed this information while watching the ocean below for any sign of their destination. After 25 minutes of flying south over open water, Park began a gradual descent toward what appeared to be empty ocean. At 5,000 feet, Sarah could make out the shapes of several boats arranged in a loose formation. A large yacht surrounded by smaller vessels that could have been pleasure craft or law enforcement assets. The yacht is their operational headquarters, Park explained. They've been using it to coordinate targeting operations against former military personnel. The smaller boats are federal agents who've been waiting for this opportunity. Park activated his radio transmitter on a different frequency. Maritime 1, this is Air 1. Approaching target coordinates. Situation normal. The response came back immediately. Air 1, Maritime 1. Target vessel confirmed stationary. All units in position. Execute on your signal. Sarah watched the drama unfold below them as the A-18 circled at 3,000 feet. The smaller boats suddenly accelerated toward the yacht from multiple directions, closing the distance rapidly while maintaining tactical formation. Even from altitude, she could see figures moving on the yacht's deck, apparently caught by surprise by the coordinated approach. 15 years of investigation, Park said. 15 years of tracking money, communications, and personnel movements. The organization that captured me in Afghanistan wasn't just local insurgents. They were part of an international network that specializes in revenge operations against Western military personnel. And now it's over. The leadership is on that yacht, thinking they're about to receive 3 captured operators. Instead, they're about to be arrested by federal agents who've been building cases against them for years. Sarah watched the maritime operation conclude as the yacht was surrounded and boarded by what appeared to be Coast Guard and FBI personnel. No shots were fired, suggesting the element of surprise had been complete. Park turned the aircraft north toward Pensacola. "We should be back at base in 20 minutes. Rodriguez's aircraft landed 10 minutes ago with no complications. And after this? After this, you go back to Emma and your life in Clearwater. The threat that brought us all together is eliminated. You can continue being the suburban mom you've been for the past 15 years. Sarah felt a complex mixture of relief and anticlimax. The operational tension that had dominated the past week was resolved, but the return to normal civilian life would require psychological adjustment after days of heightened tactical awareness. Linda Walsh actually is naval intelligence, actually was assigned to protect you, and actually did become genuinely fond of you and Emma despite the professional necessity. As they approached the Florida coast, Sarah could see Naval Air Station Pensacola in the distance. The same base they'd departed from 45 minutes earlier, though it felt like much longer given everything that had transpired. "David," she said, "the 15 years. Living as someone else, tracking killers, missing your entire adult life. Was it worth it?" Park was quiet for a moment before answering. "I got to save the lives of people I served with. I got to make sure Emma grows up safe. I got to finish a mission that started when we were all much younger and more idealistic. And now I figure out who David Park is after 15 years of being someone else. Just like you figured out who Sarah Chun is after 15 years of being a suburban mom." The aircraft touched down at Pensacola with the same precision Torres had demonstrated during takeoff. As they taxied toward the hangar, Sarah could see Linda Walsh waiting near the flight line with other base personnel and what appeared to be federal agents conducting post-operation debriefing. Emma would be expecting her home by dinner time. Mark would drop her off with stories about their weekend together and questions about Sarah's day at the naval aviation demonstration. Life would return to the routines that had defined their existence for 8 years. But Sarah knew she would never again take that normalcy for granted. Some operations ended decisively. Others simply transitioned into different phases of the same long campaign to protect the people you cared about most. As she climbed down from the cockpit, Sarah realized that her most important mission had never been the classified operations in Afghanistan. It had been the 15-year assignment of giving Emma a safe and normal childhood while remaining ready to be someone else entirely if circumstances required it. That mission was complete. And, for the first time in 15 years, Sarah Chun could live her suburban life without looking over her shoulder, wondering when the past would finally catch up with the present. The transformation was complete. The suburban mom who could eliminate threats at 30,000 feet was finally just a suburban mom again.